All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Council of the Whills podcast. We are recording right after the previous episode, so it's still July 31st. So we can get out a couple more episodes. And welcome. I'm Jen.
I'm Jane.
I'm Amber.
All right. And today is going to be all theory because we are talking about Rey's parentage. Or potential parentage.
In case you're not familiar with our show, I should note that we are not a spoiler-free podcast. Pretty much everything we say is based on leaks, rumors, and the likes, so there is a good chance that if you're trying to avoid spoilers, we're going to ruin your day. So Proceed with caution.
Let me just add, Han dying is almost 2 years old. Everybody knows Han dies.
Han died?
Sorry! Did you also know Snape killed Dumbledore?
What? Next you're going to tell me Vader is Luke's father.
He might have a sister!
What?
And there are people who are still like, how could you say that? I haven't watched the movie. You ruined Han dying. Like, it's 2 years old. Have you seriously not watched?
I'd give a 3-month, courtesy thing. To be fair, though, I deleted my Facebook for the week before I was able to see The Force Awakens. And then the second I saw The Force Awakens, I was like, I can't believe Han died. Oh, I'm an asshole.
I walked into work the next morning and I went up to all the people that I knew had seen it and I just waved my hands, had my mouth open. I'm like, you saw it, you saw it, you saw it, you saw it, you saw it. But we did actually spoil it for one of my coworkers about 2 weeks after it had come out. Somebody was like, yeah, Han died. And she's like, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I'm kind of a spoiler whore.
Yeah, See, here's the thing is, I'm here to, read all of the spoilers and leaks and stuff like that, but, a week before it comes out, I'm deleting all my social media. I don't want to know for sure that this is what happens. I want to just watch the damn movie.
I agree. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, you know what I mean? It's difficult finding that balance of wanting to be surprised, but wanting to know every little tiny detail.
Well, the problem is when you're a theorist like we are, we tend to want to back up our theories, and so, we're pawing through every single leak. Does this back up what I believe?
Oh yeah.
So it's a bit harder to just be like, I'm not going to read anything for the next 2 years over this thing I'm obsessed with.
Lies. That lasted 2 seconds.
Well, then there are people.
Yeah.
Well, there are people who go through Tumblr who do know what happens and don't tag it, and then they ruin it for the people who do really want to be surprised, and that isn't fair. It's like, if you want to be spoiled, tag it. Don't let everyone who wants to avoid it see it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I never tag my spoilers. Whoops. To be fair, I gave a warning a long time ago that I am not a spoiler-friendly blog. I also kind of spoil stuff on my general Facebook, so sucks to be my friends, I guess.
Yeah.
I know I'm an awful person. Anyway, let's get into this Maury showdown for Rey's parentage.
All right. So, we can start with the most, I don't know if celebrated is the right word.
I guess starting with the most
vocal?
Popular?
I don't know. I guess the word I'm looking for is assumed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is,
the most assumed theory is that Luke is Rey's father.
Yeah, I mean, the arguments for if she's force sensitive, the lightsaber calls, if she can call the lightsaber, it's because it's a Skywalker saga, so clearly she's the new Skywalker is one of the things I've seen all the time.
Yeah, Skywalker saga is definitely one of the arguments I see for it a lot. The movies have always been about the Skywalkers, and the main character always a Skywalker. Though arguably, I would say that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn are the protagonist of Episode 1.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, so we've always had Skywalker's at the forefront of the Skywalker saga, so naturally our protagonist would need to be a Skywalker in that regard. I don't necessarily agree with that in the sense that I think we already do have a Skywalker, confirmed Skywalker at the forefront of the story, which is Kylo Ren.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that this theory tends to forget about is you have your forefront Skywalker. He just happens to have the last name of Solo at the moment.
Yeah, and he happens to be the villain at the moment.
Yeah. I've seen other ones where it's because, Rey is on a desert planet, so therefore she's a Skywalker.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
Well, I think the idea behind it was Kathleen Kennedy said, no, Daisy Ridley said it, and then Kathleen Kennedy confirmed it, but that one of the biggest hints about who Rey is, or her heritage, is that she's all alone on a desert planet. And then this was at a panel, and I want to say it was at Comic-Con, but I can't remember. But next to her, Kathleen Kennedy started nodding her head and says, yes, it's a big hint. So I think that's the direction that they're going. I agree with you, Amber. I don't believe that Luke is her father. It's far too obvious. It's what everyone expects. And because everyone expects it, I do not believe it.
I'm personally not on the Luke Skywalker train, but I do think that, for argument's sake, it is fair to bring it up. I was talking to someone and I said, sand and sabers do not a Skywalker make. Because that is kind of the big argument, is that she's from a sand planet. She can fly really well. She had the saber call to her. She has a lot of elements of that traditional Skywalker narrative to her. And in the sense that The Force Awakens was a huge homage to A New Hope, you do see a lot of those parallels. And so quite often when you have a parallel like that, you do get some sort of connection. That being said, Jakku is such a significant planet to the Star Wars universe as it is, that I don't think that her being on Jakku is necessarily to do with her heritage, and more so that she's from an incredibly important planet. I could be wrong, but I believe that someone in one of the books, they said that Jakku used to be a lush green planet, and then they corrupted the core. The core was corrupted, and now that's why it's sand everywhere.
Yes, that was in the Chuck Wendig novel, the one after Life Debt, Empire's End. It talks a lot about Jakku, and Jakku is a very, 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 very interesting planet. And its proximity to the unknown regions, as well as its core, it definitely interested the Emperor Palpatine and the Imperials, and there was a huge Imperial observatory there. And it used to be a big area where the First Order would basically farm children for the Stormtrooper program that was eventually implemented into the First Order. So it's very interesting. I think it's much more than just, Tatooine is a desert planet, Jakku is a desert planet, therefore it's Rey. Rey is a Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as the saber goes, I don't think we've ever had this legacy idea of lightsabers. The only reason Luke got Anakin's saber was because Obi-Wan stole it and kept it for 19 years. And so I think, because part of becoming a Jedi is building your own saber, And so the idea of a legacy saber seems really foreign to me in a Star Wars universe.
The only time that you, from what I understand, that you reuse a kyber crystal is if you're a Sith and you're making your red sabers. You kill a Jedi, take the saber, make the kyber crystal, or make your
corrupt
own.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just because the lightsaber called out to Rey. It is an argument saying that, yes, she's Luke's daughter because it was Anakin's and then it was Luke's. And it was in the trailer voiceover for The Force Awakens where you have Luke talking to the audience at the time. Wasn't that when everyone was thinking Finn was Force sensitive and Finn was the main protagonist? So people were assuming that Luke was talking to Finn. But
yeah,
there's no black and white evidence. I'm really trying to be impartial about this. There's no black and white evidence for or against whether or not the lightsaber calling out to Rey means she's a Skywalker or means that she's not a Skywalker. It just means that the lightsaber called to Rey and that she was Force sensitive and she heard its call.
I just remembered my friend had live tweeted the Star Wars panel in 2015 at Comic-Con, so I'm looking to see if that's if she tweeted about the Kathleen Kennedy thing.
Well, to be fair, Luke wasn't the only person who was alone on a desert planet. So
Yeah.
it could be talking about someone else too. And we'll get into that later on. But it could mean any number of people, not just Luke.
I don't know. What are some more reasons that people think she's a Skywalker other than the parallels and the fact that it's the Skywalker saga?
I really think that's a lot of what it is, and that the idea that she needs to be related to someone.
Yeah, that's a conversation.
And that it was like that she's being hugged by Leia.
Oh, yeah, they were saying that Leia recognized her, which I don't, considering that J.J. Abrams said these two women have never met before, I don't think
Okay,
that's
so she
where
didn't.
they were going.
Yeah, she didn't tweet about it, at least so it's not, or at least she didn't get it, so it's not in the live blog from that.
Gotcha. I saw the source of it on Reddit, and I don't remember if it was at a Star Wars celebration, the one in 2015, but they were on a panel with Kathleen Kennedy.
Or D23.
Or D23, yeah. I think one other piece of evidence that Rey Skywalker advocates use a lot is the scene at the end of The Force Awakens, where Rey hands the saber off to Luke. And in the script, it mentions, I'm trying to pull the script up right now, but in the script, it mentions that Luke doesn't know who she is, but he knows why she's there.
Yeah.
And there are people who extrapolate that out to mean both things. Well, if Luke doesn't know who she is, then she's not related to him, but if he knows why she's there, then why does he know that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The Rey Skywalker theory to me is a little bit convoluted in the sense that I really don't feel like there's a whole lot of bearing for it. And I think narratively it wouldn't make a lot of sense. In the sense that if you're going to introduce your heroine to her long-lost family, you're not going to do it in the second movie. You would either do it in the first and have her deal with that, or you have it in the last and have that be the resolution. It's not...
And doesn't she tell BB-8, like, she asks BB-8 where he's from, or the droid where droid's from, and the response is, oh, big secret, me too. So making it kind of Luke, I don't know. That was one of the ones where I was like, that there's something more than just, oh, we left a Skywalker on a desert planet.
Yeah, and then I think another problem that I really have, I mean, I have a lot of problems with Rey Skywalker, if I'm being honest, just from a narrative standpoint. I think you basically have to assassinate Luke's character.
Yes.
In order to justify it.
And everybody's like, well, because, Ben turned on the order, and that's why he left her there. No, Ben apparently turned on the order when he was, like, 23. Which
she would have been 15 at the time.
Yeah, 14, 15. And she's 5 in that flashback.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense if Luke is the one who dropped her off, and I believe it was in one of the comics. It was one of the old EU comics before Disney bought Star Wars, where there's a glimpse of, or a panel of the comic, and it looks like Luke's ship that was in the flashback scene. But someone tweeted that at Pablo, and I believe his answer was, it's a ship? Okay. You know what I mean? And didn't Pablo also say that, yes, Rey's parents were in The Force Awakens, they were in the ship, dropping her off on Jakku?
Yeah.
Pablo, I feel, has done a lot to debunk Rey Skywalker without fully on debunking it.
And he's getting 5,000% done with people, too, on Twitter.
Oh, no, he's absolutely done. He's a fanboy who just wants to talk about visual dictionaries and whatnot, and here's all these people just making him feel dumb because he wants to, he doesn't want to deal with the damn Skywalker saga anymore. That's why everybody started going to Matt Martin instead.
I feel bad for Pablo because he gets thrown in the middle of ship wars and identity wars, and he's like, what?
He's like, I don't care.
Yeah. Especially for a character that he doesn't like. That's what he normally gets thrown in the middle of. It's like, he doesn't like this character. Why? And he's allowed to have his opinions. Pablo can think whatever he wants about any of these characters. But I don't like how people put him in the middle of things and then wonder why he's getting really frustrated.
So yeah, I think it would have to be character assassination in order for Luke to be the parent. And then on top of that...
It's Luke, I'm going to drop my Jedi training to go rescue my friend Skywalker. leaving his kid on a planet? Like, come on. He's even like, there's still good in Vader. I'm not going to kill him. He's my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another problem with it is that if you decide that Ben Solo is the evil Skywalker and Rey is the good Skywalker, what you actually end up doing is pitting Luke versus Leia.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a narrative that they would tell.
No.
That seems really, they've really played up their bond in a lot of ways and how much they care about each other. And so for them to have this thing where it's like Leia has to, either root against her niece or root against her son, like, that's hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think that anywhere in the movies are we going to see Leia say anything bad about Kylo Ren. I think she'll say his actions are terrible, but she's going to try to defend him to the death, just under that, he's doing really terrible things, but he's my son. Like,
Yeah. I think that's why she ends up slapping Poe Dameron.
Oh, I have a feeling that he's going to say something about Kylo Ren, and she's just going to react and, don't talk about him.
Well, I don't know how well known it is in the Resistance or in the Republic that Kylo... Or anywhere, yeah. Because it's not known in the First Order. Snoke outlawed the use of Ben Solo's name. So I don't know how known it is on the other side that he's Kylo Ren.
Exactly. Because, and I mean, this is the thing. We know it. The audience knows it. It's sort of like, it was a surprise to me reading Bloodline that it wasn't known that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker. I was like, wait, what?
So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of love for the Skywalker theory, just specifically because I don't want Luke and Leia to be pitted against each other.
Yeah. Well, speaking of pitting siblings against each other, you could also make her a Solo and, Kylo Ren's little sister.
Did you know people actually think they're twins?
Yeah, because
that makes no sense whatsoever. But
because she's 19 and he's supposed to be 29, I'm like, yeah, 10-year difference.
Yeah, funny story. People think she was frozen in carbonite.
So I read a fanfic about that, but it was only a year that she was frozen in carbonite.
Is it the one called Carbonite?
Yeah.
That's so cute. I love that story. Anyway, I digress.
Also, I don't even think Han would be okay with his kid being frozen in carbonite. Leia wouldn't be okay with it. I don't care if it was somebody being like, we need to save her, so we're going to shove her in this. Both of them are going to be like, no, carbonite. Bad.
Yeah.
Why did it have to be carbonite?
Yeah, and again, we have Bloodline, where Leia's like, I wonder what Ben, the only fruit of my womb, is doing.
Yeah, I think the Rey Solo theory is way more dead than the Rey Skywalker theory. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of life left in the Rey Skywalker theory, but I'm pretty sure Daisy had an interview where she was like, oh yeah, people came in to watch the movie and they thought I was going to be Solo, and obviously that didn't happen. And I'm like, that's a debunk right there.
Yeah.
And it's poor storytelling, because then you are saying that Han and Leia decided to leave a child on a desert planet.
Well, people think she was kidnapped, is what it was. That she was kidnapped because she's Leia's daughter, and Leia was a prominent senator.
Leia, I will tear the galaxy apart for people. Organa, it's going to be like, yeah, okay, my kid's kidnapped. I can't find her anywhere. She will be on every single habitable planet being like, have you seen this child?
Yeah.
Yeah, they think she's either kidnapped or dead.
Yeah. It's in the Force Awakens novelization when Leia hugs Rey. And I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it mentions that she hugged her in a way that felt motherly. And I think that's where a lot of the fuel to the Han and Leia had another child came from. And I also think a lot of it is remnants of fans of the old EU, because they want Jacen and Jaina Solo so bad. Like, oh, well, Kylo's evil, so Jacen Solo was evil, so that means Kylo is Jacen Solo and that Rey is Jaina Solo.
The only reason why I want them back is because Jaina Solo was the first female Jedi I really got to read about, and man, I threw her in the face of all my guy friends that were like, girls can't be Jedi.
Yeah.
I was like, screw you, they can be.
I think the EU is great, but I think the EU is staying the EU. I think maybe they're lifting stories. I think the idea of, an evil Solo is kind of exactly where they got it from, but I don't think they're being that specific with it.
I think that's it. That really is it.
I mean, they're absolutely picking and choosing because Thrawn was a part of the old EU and he had a cult following, so they took the character and then dumped him in a different timeline and changed his backstory. And some people really like Thrawn and Rebels, and some people don't. And to each their own. I was never a big fan of the old EU. It felt so disjointed. Like one author had one vision, another author had another vision, and it didn't have this cohesive unity that goes on with Star Wars now. And some people love the EU, some people hate it. And I've noticed people are really polarized on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of experience with the EU. I have a couple books that like we stopped at a gas station and they were selling a book there, so I bought it and I read it on the road. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with the EU, but I don't have like a dislike for it in any way. I think it has its place. To me, it's very much like an alternate universe sort of thing. What could have happened had things gone a different way, but this is how things went in. To me, it's like the different Spider-Mans. You know, you have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and you have the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and you have the Tom Holland Spider-Man, and they're all the same thing. It's just how different things played out.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it in comics all the time. It's like, now we're in this universe. Now we're in this universe. And you have the definite canon, but you can look at the EU as, all right, it's separate from the canon because here's where it splits, and it is the what if.
It's like Flashpoint.
Yeah. Like, what if Han and Leia actually were married and stayed in the same place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that you're changing, and that's how it goes. Also, I did pull up the novelization of The Force Awakens, and it does not say that they embraced like the mother. So, no general now. Leia took the young girl's face in her hands. Though brokenhearted at the deaths of Han and so many brave pilots, Leia was grateful for the deliverance of the Resistance. In spite of the presence of the crowd that was looking on, the two women embraced without embarrassment or hesitation. Then, tears falling, they moved inside.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's it.
Gotcha.
I think people just think the hug in general was maternal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't really see. I think you would have to explain away a whole lot of stuff. Because if they knew, like, if Han had any inkling that this chick was his daughter in any way, shape, or form, I think he would not have let Leia be so, like, oh, your friend's on Starkiller Base? I don't care. We have other fish to fry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and if he knew that was his daughter, he wouldn't have been like, Leia, I saw our son. He was taking our daughter.
Yeah.
Leia, I saw our kids. It's really messed up right now.
And, and then, there's a lot of debate over the interrogation scene, whether there's sexual tension or whether there's like an assault sort of vibe. There's arguments there. And I don't think that if they were meant to be siblings or cousins, mind you, there would have been any sort of vibe there at all. I think it would have just been a straight off interrogation.
Had they been cousins or siblings, first of all, unless somebody's wiped Kylo Ren's memory completely, the second he goes into her mind really quickly or just looks at her as like, you look familiar, and I feel like it would be really easy for him to be like, oh wait, no, you're Rey, my cousin, or Rey, my sister. It would be not instantaneous,
but you wouldn't even have to wipe his mind necessarily. It's just, if he goes traipsing along in her mind, he's going to see an image of like Luke Skywalker dropping her off on a planet.
Yeah.
Or hell, her parents would be like, wait, Parent Trap, that's my mom.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, if he can get into her memories of her dreams, I just feel like he would be able to get into like her repressed memories. And here's the thing is, I don't think she has repressed memories. I don't think she has false memories. I don't know why people assume that someone mind wiped her. I think she knows exactly who left her on Jakku, and it's none of the people she met in The Force Awakens.
Nope.
And JJ also said, and this is very hotly debated, about what he meant, because it's JJ Abrams who lied about Khan. But there was the private screening in early 2016, like February, March, around that time frame, and someone
Yeah.
or like a little kid in the audience asked who were Rey's parents, and JJ said, really not thinking because it was private, or what he thought was private, they're not in The Force Awakens. And then someone tweeted it, and it blew up into this huge story. And then the next day, he had to go back and basically do damage control and say, oh, well, what I meant was that Rey
Is they're
does.
not revealed.
Yes. I mean, and it's J.J. Abrams, and he did lie about Khan, but he's faced so much like kickback from lying about that I don't know if he'd do it again. I think he would.
I feel
Well,
like
and the thing is I don't think Lucasfilm is really in the habit of lying. I think, their misdirection and they're very obvious in what they don't say, but I don't think they're in the business of outright lying to people.
Yeah.
and I have a feeling that no matter what, Disney sat down with JJ and was like, don't do a con thing. Like, either go balls deep and say who her parents are, or leave it as that out there, but just don't do it again. Or he had that conversation, like, can I not do that? Because we don't know why. I don't know why he did the con thing. Like, if he's ever actually said the reasoning behind it.
I assume because he was dumb and he was mad that everyone figured it out, and he was like, no, he's not Khan.
Or for all we know, it was like the studio saying, we want to make this a mystery in quotation marks, and he was like, sure, mystery. Literally everybody figured it out, but okay, it's a mystery. So maybe that's it. Maybe they had the conversation of, if it's going to be a mystery, I really want it to be a mystery, and I don't want to have anybody be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Which I would like, because I feel like that kind of does sound like J.J. Abrams after everything.
That absolutely sounds like J.J. Abrams.
And it sounds like Disney.
I just hope that the answer of whoever her parents are, after this huge mystery has been built up, there are people who are going to be disappointed no matter what, but I do think there are going to be some people who are very angry, who are very, very, very angry when, no matter who Rey turns out to be, but I think that some fans are more willing to go, oh, okay, that's not really what I would have liked, but I accept it.
I think most of your general public is going to go, oh, okay, I didn't really think too hard on this whole thing, and I accept whatever you give me.
And meanwhile, the 3 fanboys that have been posting nonstop about the 13th Doctor being a woman and have not left their rooms are going to be posting nonstop about, that's not who her parents are, that was a cop-out, blah, blah, blah. It's the same 3 fanboys.
Oh, yeah. What did they say? The vocal minority?
I'm like, and that is a direct quote from somebody on the Doctor Who cast at the Sci-Fi Live from Comic-Con. So, about the 3 fanboys and the Doctor Who casting. So we have a couple more theories, but the other theory that has legs is that she is a Kenobi, and usually it's presented as she's Obi-Wan's granddaughter because, we have Kylo Ren as Anakin Skywalker's granddaughter. Personally, this theory, yeah.
Anakin Skywalker's grandson.
He has the luscious hair. Let's just...
I mean, oh, poor Kylo.
For me, if this were to work, it works better to make her the great-granddaughter, in a way.
Yeah.
Just because there is a scene in Clone Wars where he does admit to Satine, I was ready to leave the Order for you, and that's where it would come from, assumingly. And, Satine's nephew doesn't have a father.
His parents are just like vague off-screen characters, supposedly. So
yeah, and then I was like, oh, so you're Bo-Katan's son? And they're like, no. I was like, wait.
Who are you? Don't think I don't notice your hair color.
Don't think I don't notice it. Everything. And that Satine loves you. And this one, I think people point to more is because it is Ewan McGregor saying, these are your first steps, and they managed to get to take sound bites from Alec Guinness to say Rey in the flashback. So that's where a lot of this comes from, and she's British, because
And not
clearly
only is she British, she had to go through vocal training to get a different British accent.
that's true.
Isn't it like that, like Londoner accent? It's what they were going for. That really posh,
Yeah.
like
I
upper
thought she
echelon
was a
Londoner.
Londoner. I thought she was a Londoner, but
Well,
maybe not the correct accent.
She's more like there's like a I don't know how to explain it. Like her version of the London accent is more I don't want to say low class because that sounds jacked up. It's just it's not the like the British highborn royal sort of speaking.
It's not the BBC.
It's not as posh.
Yeah, because I mean, John Boyega admits that his accent isn't posh either.
Yeah. And the only reason John changed his accent was because when he was reading the lines, he said they just sounded better in an American accent.
well, he did great.
Yeah, he does a really good American accent.
I had no idea. When I first heard his natural accent, I'm like, whoa, what?
I saw him for the first time in Attack the Block, where he does have like his more natural accent. And so hearing him with an American accent is where I was like, what?
He's just a great
Which
actor.
Attack the Block is a great movie. If you haven't seen Attack the Block, you should watch it.
I need
It's aliens and stuff.
I need to add that to my list.
I do agree that if she is a Kenobi, great-granddaughter would make more sense just because of the Satine thing and the Corky thing. But there are also people who suggest that maybe Obi-Wan got it on with some chick while he was on Tatooine.
Because, again, sand planet.
Yeah, you know, that's another sand planet sort of reference, that as long as Luke lived on a sand planet, so did Obi-Wan.
Yeah. And honestly, at cons, this is the one that actually comes up most. I think twice at Comic-Con somebody said Miss Kenobi to me while I was dressed up as Rey, and I'm like, fine.
I would say that Rey Skywalker and Rey Kenobi are pretty much tied.
Yeah.
As far as popularity goes.
So something that's interesting, speaking of conventions, I didn't notice this at the Last Jedi panel, but when I went back and watched the footage that was streamed, when Josh Gad is making all the, is your name Rey Skywalker? Are you Miss Skywalker? If you look at Daisy's face, she nods no. Very, very subtly whenever she's asked, are you Rey Skywalker? But when Josh Gad asked her, are you Rey Kenobi? She just started smiling.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that, like, remember in person, like, you could see her head sort of, like, she's smirking, just, shaking her head, sort of slightly like, no. And then she just smiles wider, like, when he says Kenobi. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, micro
the
expressions are such a big deal to me in the sense that when people don't actually realize they're making facial expressions.
Yeah. But that's really, those are the legs that this one has. They did get.
She also mirrors a lot more powers, like her Force abilities tend to mirror Obi-Wan's more than they mirror like the Skywalker family.
Yeah, and if it's setting up the saga as, it's always really been. It started with Anakin and Obi-Wan being so close, and it ends with Obi-Wan trying to teach the next Skywalker, but it's the like Kenobis and Skywalkers will always circle each other and do whatever that plays out in if she's a Kenobi.
Yeah, I think narratively it's really poetic in the sense that, here you have a Kenobi who was so close to a Skywalker, and then you have someone who is what's the words I'm looking for?
Like they're setting up the Skywalker and the Kenobi as enemies now, and I mean, honestly, I do think that Kylo Ren is going to have a turn heel moment.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to happen. I don't know if it will be in this movie. I don't know if it'll be, like, at the very end. But you are setting up for the Kenobi to be the adversary, but also potentially the first one to welcome back the Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very poetic in that sort of way. And that's why I like the theory a lot. I think it is a lot harder story to tell.
I think you have a lot more that you have to explain away.
Well, isn't that why, and this is just a rumor that's been floating around, but that's why an Obi-Wan movie has not been announced yet. Because there's, I think I read it on Star Wars Newsnet, But the reason why an Obi-Wan movie has not been announced yet is because there's still more of a story to tell from Obi-Wan. And I do believe it somehow goes into The Last Jedi because there's a lot of visual parallels between the Anakin and Obi-Wan fight in Revenge of the Sith and the fight between Kylo and Rey. And specifically, it's when they lock hands and they both have each other's sabers in their hands. Anakin and Obi-Wan have the exact same pose, and Rey and Kylo do the same thing, and they mirror each other, how they circle each other, how they push one another, like they leaned Anakin and Obi-Wan over a lava pit, and then Kylo and Rey are leaning down against this great snowy precipice. And they're visual parallels, but they mirror each other. How Anakin was evil and Obi-Wan was good. It's so interesting. And if of what we've discussed, the parents that we've discussed, or potential parents that we've discussed, or grandparents, or great-grandparents, I do think that Obi-Wan has the greatest possibility of being true because of the little things. And I also read somewhere, and this was way back before The Force Awakens, shortly after it was announced, but before we got any real information, that there was a casting call out there for someone to play the granddaughter of Obi-Wan.
Yeah, actually, I wrote this meta. I don't know if you saw this going around recently, but I'm actually the one who rekindled it as a meta.
Really?
Yeah, I just recently posted a thing about how once upon a time, back in 2014, March 2014, we got a report from the Hollywood Reporter that Lupita Nyong'o was in talks to be cast in the new Star Wars movie, which as we know now is The Force Awakens, and that she was in talks to play either a villain or Obi-Wan's granddaughter. We all know that the villain role obviously went to Gwendolyn Christie, which meant that the role of Obi-Wan's granddaughter was probably offered to Lupita. She instead decided to change her mind as far as the role goes, and she decided to take a more like behind-the-scenes sort of role, in the sense that she wanted to do the mocap. She didn't want to be seen.
Yeah.
Because she had been so exposed in 12 Years a Slave that she wanted to do something more freeing and behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
Now, the Hollywood Reporter does say that this Obi-Wan's granddaughter role was separate from the male and female leads that they were casting for, which obviously those went to Daisy and John. And the reason I believe the Hollywood Reporter is because it said that John Boyega was also in talks to talk to J.J. Abrams.
Gotcha.
For a role. So because that was broken around the same time, I put a lot of stock in it. Now, obviously, we did not see Obi-Wan's granddaughter in The Force Awakens definitively. So there's a bunch of different ways that it could have gone. It could have gone to maybe they just wrote the character out because they couldn't figure out a way to make it work. Maybe they couldn't get it cast, so they decided not to use it. But that's given that they did the table read May 1st of 2014, and this news article about her maybe being cast as Obi-Wan's granddaughter came out in March of 2014, that's a really short amount of time to completely rewrite your story to take a character out. And so I was thinking maybe instead of just writing the character out, they combined that aspect of the character with maybe the two leads, either, Rey or Finn. Now, my money went to Rey, obviously, but they said that the role was definitively a role for a person of color. And so maybe we have Finn Kenobi happening. Or maybe Maz Kanata's role was originally meant to be a descendant of Kenobi who informed them rather than this random ass bar on Takodana.
Yeah.
I mean, I was for Finn Skywalker at one point, but I could get behind Finn Kenobi too.
Yeah, the idea that the granddaughter of Obi-Wan Kenobi is specifically a role for a person of color is really interesting to me, given that Finn was originally described as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, and it went to John Boyega instead. So yeah, I think there's actually more of an interesting parallel. I mean, not really. I think Rey and Kylo Ren being Kenobi and Skywalker is more narratively interesting, but I think there's a potential that Finn could actually be the Kenobi we're overlooking. But yeah, Rey Kenobi is a theory that I love a whole lot. I just don't really know how to make it work.
It's kind of like you want it, but you don't expect it.
Yeah, like it's something that like I would advocate for. Like if Ryan Johnson called me up and said, "Hey Amber, how would you make this happen?" I would say, "Ooh, Rey Kenobi."
It's the theory that I love a lot about her parentage because it kind of also shows that Obi-Wan was the most like perfect Jedi in a way, because he did have a kid, even though we know George Lucas has said that it was attachments that were forbidden, sex was not.
Yep.
So, but Obi-Wan would be that person who would be like, I will not risk procreating a child because I feel like I would have an attachment. Like, I feel like that is his character too.
Agreed.
But I do like the idea that if she is anybody, she's a Kenobi, because it would kind of also explain why the lightsaber would call to her in a way, because, the bond between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and that saber knows her. It was in Obi-Wan's possession for 19 years.
Well, I've seen that also used as another argument for Rey Kenobi, because Obi-Wan kept the saber for Luke, and it's Rey returning the saber again to Luke.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I see that.
So it's very poetic. It brings the whole story full circle, and not just the story of the sequel trilogy, but the story of Star Wars as a whole, because you have an Obi-Wan and an Obi-Wan. You have a Kenobi and a Skywalker in the prequel trilogy, and then you have a Kenobi and a Skywalker in the original trilogy, and it would feel really bereft if there wasn't some connection to Obi-Wan in the sequel trilogy to bring everything together, because there's this character who's loved so much by fans, who has such a cult following, especially on Clone Wars, to just like, oh, well, he's dead. He talks to you every now and then. We had this big giant 20-year period where no one knows what happened, but we're not going to do anything with it.
Yeah, it does make sense. And it would also make sense as to why she's just sort of left on Jakku. Obi-Wan's dead. We don't know what happened to the rest of her family, and it wipes them away cleanly because, oh, well, are we going to send her to Luke's Jedi Academy? I don't know. Didn't work so well for Grandpa. Let's not do it.
Here's my whole thing about her being left on Jakku is I asked Matt Martin why any loving parent would allow their child to be left with, like, Ungar Plutt. Like, if anyone really loved Rey, why would they leave her with Ungar Plutt? I said, please tell me why loving parents would leave their daughter with gross Ungar Plutt. They had to trust him, right? And Matt Martin replied to me and said, that answer and all it implies is way above my pay grade.
Huh.
Which I always thought to be one of the most interesting aspects about the Force back and the fact that she was left with Ungar Plutt is why. Like, what we know what a gross human being Ungar Plutt is. Why would anyone just be like, you know what? Let's just leave our 5-year-old with this gross human blobfish. It's
I'm sorry.
I just, that was always my big problem with the idea of any light side person being the one to drop her off.
Yeah.
Is I don't know why they would trust him. He's clearly a sympathizer with the First Order, with the Empire mayhaps. Like, it's just all a whole bunch of...
Well,
do we know for certain it was her parents that dropped her off?
We don't.
Because
you got Pablo saying that the only place you see her parents is in the ship leaving, so...
Okay,
that doesn't mean that it was her parents that were dropping her off. For all we know, somebody was trying to get the Kenobis in a way, and found the family, found them, took them to go do something, and left Rey on, Jakku just to sort of rot and be like, well, you're not going to survive, but we can't kill a kid. We can kill your parents, but we're not going to kill you.
And there's also the implication that, they were potentially incredibly desperate, and Ungar Plutt was the guy who was in charge. Maybe that was the reason that they left her with him.
I also think it's interesting that whoever her parents are, they left her on a planet where it had very obvious Imperial entanglements, and
Yeah.
where they used, basically there was a hut called Nema the Hut, and that's how Nema Outpost gets its name, but she made deals with the Imperial remnant to give them children. And that I always found to be really interesting, that Rey was left on a planet as a child, and at this planet was known for having an underground market for selling children to the stormtrooper program.
Oh my god. That actually sounds pretty cool.
There's just
I like that.
there's so many different places you could take it. I mean, it's
Well,
we
and
have
what if it was like the kids that they didn't think would make it in the stormtrooper program because assume Rey is tiny as a child
Yeah.
because why not? Oh, you're not going to make it in the stormtrooper program, but we have this whole scavenger program, so you can learn to do that, and that's what you're going to do, and you will trade your things for portions because why else would there just be scavengers? It's set up as this is the world and this is how it is, but why? Why are they there? Why are they pulling all these parts? What is Unkar Plot doing with the parts that they're pulling? So if it is, he's selling it back to the First Order, and the First Order is like, okay, well, you aren't a stormtrooper, therefore you are this.
Yeah.
Well, now that makes me wonder, are there non-human stormtroopers? Because that's a whole lot of army, and I don't think, like, there's that many human children running around. They have to just be taken humanoids, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that there are many non-human stormtroopers because the Empire is very biased against non-humans. Part of what makes Thrawn such an anomaly in the Empire is because he's a non-human, and that there's this huge bias against aliens in the Empire.
And it makes sense for we are better than people coding.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just curious as how are there any humans left if they took that many babies?
I don't know, but it's disturbing in Empire's End how many children get sold essentially to the First Order or what will become the First Order, and you get to hear about Brendel Hux creating this, reconditioning program to make these little kids into the perfect soldiers. And you have and then you have little like Armitage, it's like Lord of the Flies. This kid is awful. If you've ever played, like, to go back to make a Metal Gear Solid reference, he's like Eli from Metal Gear Solid 5, where he's this kid who like tortures everyone else. He's a freaking sociopath. But I digress.
Sounds about right. Okay, next theory. Because, I mean, Kenobi has a few more things in the movie, but that's it. The other one that I've seen a lot is Palpatine, which, first of all, that means somebody would have had to potentially sleep with Palpatine all wrinkly. Let's all have that image in our minds.
I don't want to think about Sheev getting busy with anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I met Ian McDiarmid. He's perfectly nice, but it's one of those things where I'm like, but I don't think that this one has any legs to stand on, really, other than people are like, she's British, therefore she's bad.
No.
Good. I mean, you have two distinct British-speaking folks in the entire series, and that's a Kenobi and the bad guys. So I understand it.
Did it ever come out why they let Ewan McGregor not keep his accent, have an accent?
You mean Alec Guinness?
Oh, yeah, shut up. I was like, yeah, it's Ewan McGregor, clearly. And then I'm like, wait, edit that out.
I won't, because it's funny. Yeah, no, I think Alec Guinness just spoke the way he did, and then they just ran with it.
Yeah.
Which actually makes me really intrigued, like, because do we know anything about, like, Obi-Wan's family? Like, does he come from the dark side?
His last name is Kenobi.
And he's from the planet called Stewjon, and that's the only thing that's ever really been revealed about young Obi-Wan. He was apprenticed to Qui-Gon. He's from a planet called Stewjon. That's really all we got.
He has a blue lightsaber. At one point, he was going to leave the Order for Satine. This is all we know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's not a lot of backstory.
I mean, hell, we know that where Anakin's from and the Force being his father and Shmi, and we have everything, but we even have a lot on Palpatine, but we don't have anything on Obi-Wan. We have Padme's entire history. Not even in supplemental materials does it really go into Obi-Wan.
Not
That
really.
is, I'm
Yeah,
like
you
sitting
know,
here like,
even if
what?
even if we don't have a reason for a Kenobi movie, we need a Kenobi movie just because we don't know a damn thing about this hermit.
Yeah. Well, and there's such a fan call for it. If they made an Obi-Wan movie, fans would see it because fans love Obi-Wan.
I love Obi-Wan. He's my favorite character. That's why I get so mad when people are like, Kylo Ren killed Han Solo, who's my favorite character, so he deserves to die forever. And I'm like, Darth Vader killed my favorite character, so you can all suck a nut.
Because it would be interesting because there wasn't an empire when Obi-Wan was growing up.
No.
There wasn't.
There wasn't. So
time of relative peace.
yeah, potentially one of the other reasons why Obi-Wan is like kept himself on Tatooine and kept himself there besides to watch over Luke is there's a potential Kenobi that's a general in the Empire. There's no reason for there not to be.
I could love how this was a Rey parentage theory video, and now it's a Kenobi parentage.
We're like, so if she's a Kenobi, she could be related to the Empire in this way.
No bias whatsoever.
But this is kind of an interesting sort of thing, is like, where is Obi-Wan's family in the sense that Kenobi, how popular a name is that? Like,
is it the Smith of the galaxy? But I don't think it is because they know him and they know Obi-Wan, but the fact that he could go by Ben for so many years and nobody would bat an eyelash.
Yeah, everyone's like, Ben Kenobi? I wonder if that could possibly be Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And they're like, nah.
I mean, yeah, like, why would you not assume that this guy with this same last name that you've never heard before is the same guy over here that's been living in this little hovel for years and years?
I mean, to be fair, like, because this did kind of just happen, you don't assume people are who they are unless you talk to them and get to know them. Like, literally one person in front of me, the security line coming back from San Diego was Missy from Doctor Who. Like, she was just in line with her kid. And this guy started talking to her, and I was like, oh, they must know each other because she's Scottish and he's British and blah, blah. And I kept like looking at her, being like, you look familiar. And finally she asked if she knew the guy, and he said, no, you're famous. And I was like, oh, I put it together. So in theory, like, yeah, people would be like, oh, Ben Kenobi, he kind of looks like Obi-Wan, but maybe not. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it's the same name, and maybe I'll just go talk to him.
Obviously, Ben Kenobi got around on Tatooine because people knew who he was.
Yeah.
They thought that he was the crazy old man.
Yeah, people knew. Shit, I'm having a whole lot of thoughts now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at a minimum, they knew of him. Even if they didn't know his backstory, they knew of Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ben Kenobi. Well, he was always the guy who got Luke out of trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, how do you go into relative obscurity? You're Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, you...
Well, how popular, like, how well-known were the Jedi outside of, like... I mean, I don't know the names of any of, like, Donald Trump's Secret Service agents. Is that how it works?
But people knew of Anakin, and people knew of Anakin, so it wasn't weird that it was Luke Skywalker. I guess you're related to Anakin Skywalker. So I would think that people knew who Obi-Wan Kenobi was. It's just how did it get to Tatooine? Did it get all the way out there? Why?
I mean, Obi-Wan was so well known, he had a nickname. It was the Negotiator because of how silver-tongued he is and how he could diffuse any situation. So, I mean, he was General Kenobi.
Was he silver-tongued, or was he just affecting everybody with his mind?
I mean, does it really matter?
Yeah, no, this is all really interesting to me now, is like, how did Obi-Wan just like, how popular is the Kenobi name? Like, does he have siblings or something like that? Like, could Rey be Obi-Wan's grandniece or great-grandniece? Like, does she have to be directly descended from him?
No, I mean, it's entirely possible that, and I mean, even if you go to great granddaughter, like, it, you have the one kid, but it's not, it doesn't have to be, yeah.
This is all very interesting. Sorry to completely derail you, Sheev, but I don't think you're real.
Well, all of us we're like, yeah, Palpatine. Anyway, back to Kenobi.
Well, I mean, there's a lot more to talk about Kenobi. I mean, I think it's the most compelling theory if there is one to be had, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, Palpatine, I don't think he has anything to do with Rey. I think putting face over there just kind of didn't really...
Dude, his, like, early life on, Wikipedia is nothing.
Well, it's because his entire early life was retconned. The Plagueis novel, which is one of the really good EU novels. If you're going to read any of the old EU novels, read the Plagueis novel. But he was from Naboo, and he's this like Machiavellian Littlefinger, only a lot better than Littlefinger, schemer who he's an interesting character, and I like Sheev Palpatine. I think he has a really interesting story, but there's no evidence to support him being Rey's grandfather. The only thing that I see people arguing is it's narrative. It's because Luke was descended from an evil guy, Rey is descended from an evil guy, and like, a decent storytelling isn't evidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's another problem I have with Kenobi is that just because it's narratively beautiful doesn't mean it makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it true that Palpatine had concubines?
God, I don't know.
I think I read it somewhere.
Yeah, I don't want to actually look that up because that scares me, but let's see, I'm on his wiki. Wife. This is all about Padme, goddammit.
Well, I mean, the Sith love sex. That's been established. I mean, they're all about sex. Or passion, but it's another word for sex.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a nightmare I didn't need to have, so... I don't really think there's a whole lot of evidence. Could it happen? Could we see more of that in, The Last Jedi to support it? Possibly. Based on The Force Awakens, not really feeling it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more manipulation you have to do with that one. Like, well, this, and this, and this, and this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more storytelling that would have to go into it to make it make sense than even Kenobi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, what else? Phasma? People think Phasma's her mom?
Yeah. I mean...
What?
I'm like, that's hilarious. And at the same time, I'd be like, not a bad theory.
It's interesting, and it would definitely give us more of that whole, like, no, I am your father. No!
No!
Moments. That's where it becomes interesting for me. But I think it's just a little bit too, I think it's abusive to Phasma as a character in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's already so badass on her own. Like, she stands by herself as a great character. Minus the whole, why would you, even if you survive this Phasma, like, nobody's gonna forgive you for letting the shields down. You didn't have to do that. Anyway, but other than that, like, Phasma's such a cool character, I think it would just reduce her to Rey's mother if they did that,
Yeah. Well, not only that, there's just no evidence.
Yeah, the only evidence is the, Luke Vader connection in the sense that here's some person on the dark side. But did Rey even interact with Phasma? Like, Phasma isn't her antagonist. It would be more interesting for, like, Phasma to be Finn's mother than it is for Rey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of... I think it's an outlandish sort of thing. But who knows? Maybe we'll find something from her book that suggests that she did have a child that she threw in, some random planet. I don't know. I think Phasma as a character is just too, like, cold.
Yeah.
Even though I think there's that little tidbit that, like, she remembers all of the stormtroopers by name and stuff like that. Like, she knows all of them.
I also think it just, clearly for people to care about Phasma, she has to be Rey's mom. And that
Yeah.
kind of it does cheapen Phasma's character. Like,
Yeah, like just let her be badass.
yeah.
So
Spoiler,
that's where I'm at.
Another one is Supreme Leader Snoke, because if we're all kind of skeeved about Palpatine having sex with someone, let's all think about, that monstrosity.
I mean, maybe he didn't look like that in the past. Oh, God. I would believe Snoke is like a grandfather, hypothetically.
I would believe Snoke is a sperm donor.
Ugh, no.
Nope. Nobody said that anybody else has to touch him to get that.
Yeah, but that's worse. That's a worse mental image for me.
Like raise a test tube baby.
So gross. I don't want to know it.
Kylo Ren, I have a few tasks for you.
I just don't think there's a whole lot of evidence towards Snoke, especially because he's all like, the scavenger resisted you. Like, your daughter is a scavenger, right? You dropped her off on Jakku. It just doesn't make sense.
No.
It doesn't make sense that he would be like, yeah, screw her.
Well, and then he'd be like, oh, it's her strength. It's not her strength. It's your weakness. Bring her to me. I will show you a lesson in the dark side. It's like, if he knew that was his daughter, that would make no sense.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's just, I don't like it. But on the subject of test tube babies, that's another one of the theories, that she's either a reincarnation of Anakin or a clone of Anakin, or a manifestation of the Force. What do we think about these alternative birth theories for Rey?
I just feel like it would kind of be the reuse of Anakin if it was, she's a product of the Force in someone. I'm like, no, we've done that. We're not talking about midichlorians anymore. We really aren't. If you notice that. So that one is, I'm like, please don't.
I think...
I mean, I know we've seen that she's the reincarnation of the first Force user. I'm fine with that, but she has real parents and blood things happened.
Yeah. I can accept the reincarnation of the first Force user, but I don't think that actually answers the question of who her parents are. So, yeah, I think the thing is that J.J. Abrams wrote the original, treatment, including her parentage. And he is a known hater of the prequel trilogy. So I really just don't think that he would bring in any of those aspects into his story. I don't think that makes sense for a J.J. Abrams sort of thing in that sense.
No, he would rather have you be like, what's in the box? And give you all the clues as to what's in the box, but then tell you not, be like, just kidding, it's actually a safe.
And that's
the box is full of your favorite thing. Disappointment.
Like, it's a polar bear.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah, I never watched Lost, so I'm just like, nope.
The ending is horrible. Just don't.
Yeah, I can't back those theories just because, A, they feel too much like the prequel trilogy, and B, if you have Anakin's Force ghost running around, how are you going to have someone be the reincarnation of him?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This reincarnation of Anakin Skywalker, it bugs me, because not only do you completely invalidate everything that Anakin did, whether as Anakin or as Darth Vader, it's the same person, but you completely invalidate everything he did and then just give it to another person. It's like, it's stupid.
Yeah. I can accept her as another variation of the Chosen One.
Yeah.
But not necessarily Anakin.
I mean, it could be the Chosen One for destroying the Sith. It could be the Chosen One for restoring the Jedi. It could be the Chosen One for restoring the Sith.
Bringing balance.
Yeah. But by saying, oh, she's Anakin 2.0, it's like, no. It's lazy writing.
It's boring writing. And I know people The Force Awakens gets criticized as being A New Hope again, but that would be what it would be. It would be the prequel trilogy. It's just again.
Well,
yeah, I don't want my sequel trilogy to be a mashup of the other two trilogies.
Well, with the criticism of The Force Awakens being just like A New Hope, there are certain storytelling elements that are integral to Star Wars, and that's Joseph Campbell's heroic journey. And you have to set those elements up to tell a good narrative story. And that's part of what the prequels were missing and why they failed so badly. So you need to establish, this is stage one, this is everyday life, this is the call to action, this is the rejection of the call to action, this is the trials, this is the belly of the beast, this is the boon giver, then apotheosis, and it's a formula that works time and time again for
Well, and you also have to consider that because our main character is a girl, she actually follows the heroine's journey
yeah.
as opposed to the hero's journey. So there's no way we can, I mean, yeah, you set up these narrative beats. And I think what I really enjoy about The Force Awakens is I think that we have two heroes' journeys going on with Finn and Kylo Ren,
Hmm.
and then a heroine's journey going on with Rey. Like, I think we have three distinctive stories occurring.
I think we do. That's a good way to put it.
And so that's fantastic to me. But yeah, like, I mean, like you're saying, like, we have this general, like, formulaic storytelling that we have, and the thing is like, J.J. Abrams wasn't going to come in here and make a completely different movie, because he wanted something that Star Wars fans would expect, but also deviate. So had he just come in here and was like, by the way, the Force is actually powered by this guy named Barry, and everyone now flies using bicycles, and everyone is actually Sith. Like, he couldn't have made all these changes. He needed to make this cohesive story that felt like it comes from the same universe,
Hmm.
and then allow his compatriots to kind of really adapt adapt everything else from there.
Yeah.
So I don't know too much about the heroine's journey other than that it's different from the heroic journey. Is like, what are the key differences between the heroine's journey versus the hero's journey?
Okay, so the hero's journey is like, everyone knows the, like, hero's journey in the sense that you do have that call to action, and the thing is I think that, so the difference with the heroine's journey is that while the hero tends to follow this kind of set path of having a mentor and stuff like that. And the weird thing about Rey is I really feel like she's following both the hero's journey and a heroine's journey at the same time, which is really hard, but it's impressive. But the crux of the heroine's journey is more so, it's turning a female into more masculine traits of, like, being a fighter and being stuff like that, and it's about the duality of a character, basically.
Gotcha.
It's a little misogynistic in a way, in the sense that you basically have to become more mannish in order to complete your heroine's journey. Like, you have to be this feminine character, and you start off kind of becoming more masculine. Like, you're, instead of being a survivor, you suddenly become a fighter, a trainer. You turn into a hero specifically. It's really interesting because I think it has a deeper lower point for a heroine than you traditionally get for a hero.
Hmm.
Because the heroine's journey is the shift from feminine to masculine, the road of trials, the illusion of success, the descent, meeting with the goddess, reconciliation with the feminine, reincorporation of the masculine, and then the union. So the heroine's journey is generally more about balance. Like, I think the Hunger Games follows the heroine's journey pretty hardcore,
Okay.
because
It
you
does.
have this. It does, because you have this character who starts off and she's, like, trying to survive, and you see that she's female and whatnot, but, like, you really don't see her as a female because she's, like, a hunter and, like, a badass kind of
Well,
and whatnot.
and she specifically rejects some of the female things at the beginning, like
Yeah,
Gail's
she
like,
draws a strict comparison between her sister and her mother being more feminine to her being more, I have to hunt, I have to be the father figure in this sort of thing.
Gotcha.
yeah,
So she kind of takes over this, like, protector role, which is traditionally more masculine, and then, she has her problems, and then it looks like she wins, but then, like, your low point is, oh, she has to go back into the what do you call it?
the arena.
Yeah, she has to go back into the arena, and then I don't really know what her meeting the goddess moment is in the Hunger Games. I would assume when she meets either
I think her
Coin,
meeting the
maybe?
no, I think her meeting the goddess moment. If it, I mean,
It's not literal, but
I know. I almost want to say it's when her wedding dress transforms into the Mockingjay,
mayhaps.
because that
But
because that is like the start of her descent. It sounds like.
well, I
No,
was
I mean,
talking about the series as a whole, as
yeah.
opposed to the individual book. I think the descent would be having to go back into the arena. The meeting with the goddess, I think, is when when she goes to District 13 and, meets President Coin. I think Coin is probably the goddess figure for her. Maybe, I don't know. The heroine's journey isn't used as often, but
Yeah.
and the thing is I don't think a lot of male writers know the heroine's journey well enough to write it.
Well,
So therefore, we don't get a lot of it. And I mean, I feel like if we wanted to find more examples, it would be in young adult literature. So yeah, The Hunger Games is a perfect example as to why we're using it.
Yeah,
Because
because a lot of our
I honestly,
female heroes tend to be more masculine. Like, they think in order to write a strong female character, you have to make them more manly, which is kind of part of the heroine's journey in that sense.
gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, actual material on the heroine's journey, it's so different from person to person. Finding the academic source has actually proved to be a giant pain in the butt.
Yeah, I generally go with
I mean, it's interesting.
Maureen Murdoch. Yeah, there we go.
Well, one thing that they are doing with Ray that I do think is a good thing, but they're taking a lot of these tropes and they're subverting them. Like
Yeah.
the helpless damsel. Well, not so much. She kicks Kylo's ass.
Yeah, and not only that, she saves herself from the situation as opposed to waiting on anyone to rescue her.
Yeah,
she, I mean, yeah, it's that moment where you think that she's stuck in the interrogation room. She figures it out. She figures out how to get herself out. She's figuring out the starship to sort of escape and get everywhere. And every time she's backed into a corner, she figures it out. And I know a lot of fanboys, uh, people on the internet will say, "Oh, but that makes her a Mary Sue." I'm like, no, that makes her a Luke Skywalker.
the Mary Sue argument is so stupid because first you have to define what a Mary Sue is. A Mary Sue is a self-insertion of the author. It is not a perfect character. It's commonly used as that because an author will often put themselves, an idealized version of themselves, into their work. But that's not who
Yeah,
Ray is.
Even if you do want to go with the, traditionally like perfect definition, she's not. She's standoffish and flawed, and even her like insane skills are explained by her backstory. Like, she's a good flyer because of the flight simulator software she played. She's a good fighter because she had to defend herself on Jakku. She's good at this stuff because she has a reason to be good at this stuff, not because she's friggin' 8 years old or whatever and winning pod races.
to get back on topic, do we have any other theories that we want to go into? Or
My number one theory, and the one I think will end up being true, is Rey Nobody.
I think that that's a very plausible and probably one of the forerunning theories right now.
Yeah.
There's no reason to make her related to anybody.
Yep.
It shrinks the universe in a lot of ways if every single hero we have is somehow related to another hero or villain we've had in the past. And on top of that, I think it reduces her character in a lot of ways because, right now she's really powerful and she's really strong and she's really impressive. And I think if you sit there and say, well, she's a Skywalker, well, she's a Kenobi, or well, she's a Palpatine, or well, she's a Windu, or well, she's a Fett, if you attach her to somebody else's name, I think it reduces her character in a lot of ways to where people will say, that's why she's strong, as opposed to, no, she's just strong.
Yeah.
And it reduces. You're right. And it makes it sound like you can't have somebody be strong in this universe unless they are related to somebody else. In which doesn't you even kind of loop Luke into that, because why is Luke strong? Well, he's Anakin Skywalker's child. Why is Anakin Skywalker strong? Because he's the Force's child. It all matters who you're related to. Except for Han. I mean, it matters who Leia is related to. It matters who Kylo Ren is related to. So having this character come in that is related to literally nobody and can still hold her own, it kind of brings back wonder to Star Wars, because it doesn't have to just be this family drama that's playing out. It's, look, anybody can get involved and slap Skywalker up the side of the head. But the galaxy doesn't revolve around them.
I definitely agree. Well, didn't Daisy say that, because she knows who her parents are?
She does.
She said that it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter who they are as much as it matters the journey that Rey is on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, even Maz says that. Whoever you're waiting for on Jakku, they're never coming back. The belonging you seek is not behind you, it is ahead. I think that is what Daisy was referring to when she said the parentage question was made clear in The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Well, even hasn't Pablo implied that too on his Twitter, that during that scene with Maz in the cantina, when she says, they're never coming back, but there is someone who could, like, Maz is making a clear delineation between people who left Rey on Jakku and Luke, and they're not the same person.
Well, and to be fair, it's Rey who says that Luke could come back. Maz could have been referring to anybody in that moment. I personally think she's referring to Kylo Ren.
Gotcha. I mean, it could be.
But yeah, like, Star Wars, I think George Lucas said that his original goal for Star Wars was to show that anyone can be a hero. And I think he lost his message a little bit in all that. And I think Ryan was saying that too, in the sense that why Rose is a maintenance worker who gets involved with the Resistance missions is the idea that anyone can be a hero. And that's why I think, like, who Finn's parents aren't important. Who Rey's parents aren't important. These are the heroes of our galaxy, and it doesn't matter who they're related to, it matters what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, Rey Nobody is who I expect, and I think Rey Nobody has the biggest, not so much implications, but the biggest world building potential and expanding on not just the world, but the Force and what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too many people are caught up in the idea that the Force is genetic, because what we've seen so far is Anakin Skywalker has 2 Force-sensitive children, and Leia has a Force-sensitive child. And so, yes, you can, pass the Force on to your children. It's not how you get the Force.
And I was thinking about that, like, I think earlier today. It's the Harry Potter problem. A witch and a wizard makes a witch or a wizard. A witch and a muggle tends to make a witch or a wizard, or vice versa. And muggles can make witches and wizards, and there are other things. But we don't know how the Force is made, because they would take in the Jedi Order, they would take kids that were Force sensitive from their families. So how are they there? If assumingly they have 2 parents there, and assumingly those parents just had a kid and they can have siblings, why is this kid Force sensitive but this one isn't? And it seems like the Skywalkers might be the oddballs of the galaxy.
Probably because they're all, half Force.
Yeah.
Quarter Force, Yeah,
and that could be it. It could be the fact that they're, pure or part Force, and that's why it's going down through the generations. But for all we know, Leia was not expecting her child to be Force sensitive at all. Like, yeah. It was a complete, because that's not in any of the books. Like, it was a complete surprise that she's meditating and all of a sudden she feels this Force signature, which it was. But that he even had it was like, oh crap, we didn't expect this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, and I mean, you sit there and you see, like, how big the Jedi Order is. You see these younglings, that Anakin slaughtered. But, like, you see so many Force-sensitive people, and clearly the Jedi aren't breeding to make these Force-sensitive kids, so the universe just has to be creating this many Force-sensitives. And so the idea that every Force-sensitive has to descend from a Skywalker or a Kenobi is kind of nonsense in a lot of ways. Because, even if here's one of the things that confuses me. is I'm not entirely sold on the idea of Luke Skywalker really having an academy, because in Bloodlines, he's just off with Ben Solo, so who's running the academy? But even so, if he does have this academy or something like that, he's got Force-sensitive kids running around. Why, out of all of those kids, are we going to assume that this Force-sensitive is someone's kid?
Exactly.
What's interesting is that I agree with you so much about where is it directly stated Jedi Academy. Where?
I think in like a visual novel, but that could be superseded by the canon real fast.
Yeah, because when you look at the movie, Han says he was building a new generation of Jedi. He doesn't say he had an academy where they had dorms and it was Jedi Harry Potter Hogwarts. You know,
Yeah, a new generation of Jedi could just be Ben.
I think part of what people are reading into it about it being a Jedi Academy is partially from the EU. It really is, because he had an academy in the EU, so everybody's like, well, it clearly is going to be like this. This is what it was like because this is what we know. Whereas, you're right, the material we have right now doesn't support it. I mean, he was training people, so for all we know, he's going around the galaxy with Ben, training them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was looking for Force sensitives to train.
I mean, Bloodline specifically mentions the word acolytes. That's the only mention, other than Ben, but that's the only mention of students and pupils, and people have these assumptions that Luke was making them all wear Padawan braids and go through all of the traditional Jedi training. But there's no...
Which he didn't go through that, so how much information could he truly have on that, unless here's Obi-Wan just being like, hey, here's Anakin, just be like, this is what I did.
Yeah,
he's just one dude. Like, how could he possibly train an army of students when you had, here's Yoda teaching the younglings, here's, Padawans, I just don't think he could train them all the same way as the Jedi Order did, X years ago.
I think the script from The Force Awakens says, and I can try and pull it back up in front of me, but in The Force Back it mentions you see a temple burning. Not a school burning, not an academy burning. It says you see a temple burning. Could be a Jedi temple. We don't know. But the assumption that Ben Solo, I mean, he did kill people, or Luke's acolytes. I think that has been confirmed through Pablo and other people. But the idea that he went through and killed hundreds of thousands of kids and burned everything down, and I think we're meant to think that. But when you actually look at the material, there's nothing that directly says it.
Yeah, it's all just really fuzzy for me. I think everyone gets the kind of Anakin sort of thing, like, oh, well, when Anakin turned to the dark side, he made sure a bunch of Jedi died and he killed a bunch of younglings.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people are getting the idea that when Ben Solo turned to the dark side, he had to kill a bunch of younglings and students and stuff. I don't see where in the canon we actually get this idea that he just slaughtered an entire high school of Jedis.
Yes, we'll see in the next movie, because I think we're going to get the other half of Rey's Force back from Luke's perspective. But it's frustrating how people, I think that they're meant to jump to these conclusions, but you really just dissect it apart and go, okay, where does it say this? Where does it say that? Wait a second, it doesn't. And I do think you have a point of people trying to piggyback off of, oh, well, Anakin killed everyone and Kylo's a douche, so there you go. That's what happened.
I like that.
Yes.
Here's another question. How would Luke Skywalker find these Force-sensitive children? Where would he get these Force sensitives from? Because if he can sense Force sensitivity across the galaxy, why wouldn't he find Rey?
Yeah, I never thought of that. Truthfully, I've never thought of it. How does he know about where all these kids are? People just dropping them off? But even that doesn't make sense.
Yes, you killed Vader. Let me give you this child who can float pears across tables.
Well, Padme presses her duress button aggressively.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just a lot that's not really being addressed for me to accept it as canon yet, because I got more questions than they got answers.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, final wrap-up score sheet. Who are we thinking is the father? Luke Skywalker?
You are not the Father.
Han and Leia?
Not the Father.
Sheev Palpatine?
Not the Father.
Supreme Leader Snoke?
Not the Father.
Asma?
Not the mama.
Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Call me maybe.
Clone of Anakin, reincarnation of Anakin, birthed by the Force. Rey Nobody. All right, thanks for listening to our Rey Parentage special. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope we didn't offend you in any sort of way. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and give likes, thumbs up, subscribe, all that jazz. We have a Tumblr at councilofthewills.tumblr.com. We have an email where you can send comments, questions, and the like at councilofthewills@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and SoundCloud. And, yeah, that's about it. So, hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Adios.
Later.
Bye.